DC here. Hi, guys and gals. Well, hope you're well. It is Sunday morning and I'm having coffee. I just finished doing a certain amount of Spanish lessons. Yeah, you probably know my routine by now. I've said it more than once. When I get up, I do some quiet time, I would say, Bible reading and things like that. And then I go on to Spanish exercises and lessons. And I was going over a video where I'll be discussing soon. It was basically I pulled out the transcript of the video, which was an interview to a journalist, and on a particular subject. I won't get into it. And when we do discuss sometimes with my Spanish professor different things, and it's fun. It's fun. I mean, we had a blast because he what is he? He's 51, but he's a Star Wars fan. I never was, but to get into the mode of Star Wars fandom, I actually went and watched um, I watched this. We could almost call it the original three I had seen, because they're just so old or something like that. But then I put in the whole package. Not everything Star Wars. I'm not that crazy about it, but I started, like the movies that were made, most of them at least. Yeah, nine all in all. And then we went into a big discussion about the philosophy and the theology of Star Wars and the Jedi versus the Siths and so on, and made a whole document on it to study it, not really study it, but to discuss in an almost half serious, half amusing way. And it was fun. It's actually quite amusing when you can uh, learn things and have fun at the same time. Isn't that why very often people hated school? Because they just didn't seem to have any fun. Uh, and I guess that's part of it. And I mean, there's a lot of other things. I didn't like school that much. I was good at it. I mean, I was a good student. I had very good grades, but I didn't really particularly like school. Hated exams, but I think most people like that. Hmm. Oh, yesterday was one of those typical, I like to say typical Saturdays, but it wasn't quite. But we had part of the kids over, well, part of the family over, and I made salmon teriyaki. It was nice. It really was actually. It's um, it's one of those perfect recipes for the instant pot. So you just basically make your own teriyaki sauce, which is really, really easy. I was almost going to say there's no reason to buy it except that you probably don't have the ingredients at home. That's why most people probably end up buying it. But basically, it's dumping everything together. And yeah, I had some frozen salmon from Lidl. Lidl is one of those um, German discounters, which over here is very popular. I don't know if you have Lidls in the LIDL. If you have those in America, I know you have Aldi's. We have both, and so the salmon that we buy comes from there. It's the frozen slabs, and I cook that with some jasmine rice, and there was some. We had some asparagus from Mexico that was absolutely great. It really, really was. And again, all this stuff is perfect for cooking with an instant pot. And so anyway, so I had three instant pots out there. One for the rice. You could have, or I could have cooked the rice in the same pot as the salmon, like a pot in pot. But I sometimes prefer cooking it separately because I control 100%, the time factors and so on that way. Oh, but anyway, I'm getting into the technical stuff. Yeah, today I'm going to be cameraman at the church. I'm jumping around, aren't I, in my conversations today? Yeah, cameraman at the church. Basically, that just means that I film and then put the things together. And I've mentioned this before. You know, when you get to retirement, there's not that much going on as there maybe used to be when you were in a work environment. There could be, but there not always is. And so you end up, I think that's why people end up saying that old people repeat themselves all the time. Because basically we're in our routine. Uh, the routine doesn't change all that much from one day to another. And so you know, you're just sitting there and you're saying, like, what happened? Oh, I'm going to talk about my day. And then you realize that your day was pretty much the same as the day before. Not identical, but pretty much the same. You know, we're not like having a bunch of conversations with other people. And so, you know, you gotta keep busy. Otherwise, yeah. I was listening to somebody who was on a podcast actually, and I listen to a lot of podcasts of various subtopics and subjects, and you know they were talking about retirement, and one guy, he's in his 80s and he's still doing the podcast, and he was saying, he says, well, he says, I guess one day I'll be retired, and they kind of laughed and they said, if you're not retired at 80, you probably never will be. And they say, yeah, well, you know, I just don't feel like I want to go and sit on my couch all day and so on. I thought, like, well, you know, you don't have to be sitting on your couch all day if you're retired, unless you know you're handicapped in a way that you can't move around. But even then, you can do other things. So yeah, that was one of the discussions. I was listening to, oh, it's one of my favorite podcasts actually. It's the Irish History Podcast. You know how I kind of love Ireland, and the Irish History Podcast is very, very interesting. And there's a companion podcast to it, which I don't remember the exact title, but it's basically about Irish people living in America. So they do it together sometimes. And so basically the whole history about it, and there's something there's something about that, and the way the guy speaks and everything, and he goes and gets guests and so on, that talks to me a lot. I mean, the other day he was talking about how people from Ireland who had gone to the United States or other places, but in this case it was about the United States, and how many people of their family were getting, for example, pensions from them. We're talking like mid 1800s, something like that, or going up to the early 1900s maybe. And you know what had to be proven, why, and so on. And these are historians, and so they're going through old papers and stuff like that. And then there might be, you know, the relations between Ireland and the UK at the time, or Britain at the time, you know. And so, as far as I'm concerned, it's very interesting. I know a lot of you were saying, it doesn't sound very interesting, but it is for me, and so I enjoy it a lot. I really really like that. It's amusing how each one gets into something sometimes, and that's exactly it. When you're in that phase, it doesn't have to only be retirement, but I do think it is interesting to see if you get into a hobby or something already at one point in your life, that you can move on and grow with it. You know, it really is something. I mean, take for example Jasmine's ghost haunts, or you know, or carnival, or so I'm talking about Jasmine now, but I mean, because that's the example that came to my mind. But you know, many of us really have actually things that we really like, and you know, they'll help us grow. They'll help us grow, and they'll help us to grow old. In a way, yeah. It's up to 10 minutes, and I've just been chatting along, not really saying anything. Okay, I guess I'll stop there. Continue with my coffee and my Spanish lessons. A little bit. DC signing off. Take care. Have a great Sunday. Bye bye.